RE2, we are so fucking back. State of Play happened. We got nothing from Square Enix. We didn't get shit from them. Except for, like, what was it, Final Fantasy Tactics reveal, hey, buy our game in a couple days. Like, I think that's all we got, maybe. Maybe they promise you, Square Enix. Everybody at this point knows that the Final Fantasy Tactics Remaster exists. You don't need to market it at a State of Play a couple days before it's coming out. Anyways, we got nothing interesting from Square Enix at State of Play. We still have Tokyo Game Show, right? That's still going on for the next handful of days or whatever, so there's still hope for something potentially. But we actually did get a pretty big update for Part 3, surprisingly, just kind of out of nowhere, that I just came across on the feed on Twitter. This random tiny interview with Automaton and Hamaguchi where he just gives us some, like, decent updates for Part 3. The main one being that, according to Hamaguchi, a lot of the content of the game is already playable. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, the second installment of Square Enix's ambitious remake trilogy, launched to high critical acclaim in February last year, earning a Metacritic score of 92 and a user score of 8.9. However, its initial sales did not quite meet expectations, as stated by Square Enix in subsequent investor briefings. The game's momentum seemed to pick up again with the PC version's launch earlier this year, but how is FF7 Rebirth performing commercially now? Automaton recently asked director Naoki Hamaguchi, who gave some reassuring insights. The second entry, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, has been doing very well on both PS5 and PC. I know some fans have expressed concerns, but please rest assured we'll be able to deliver a proper high-quality third installment. So it is good to hear. Rebirth is doing well on PS5 and PC, according to Naoki Hamaguchi, the director of the game, right? But also found it weird that he needed to clarify that and, you know, to say that we can deliver like a high quality third installment. I don't know if some people are like expecting that the entirety of like the third game's funding goes from like the Rebirth sales or some shit, but like because it's obviously not the case. I don't know that like the entire amount of money required to make the third game was already set aside, but a large part of it would have been, right? Because I already started making the third game and working on the third game before Rebirth even came out, right? So again, I'm not sure if there's people in the community that were concerned that because Rebirth wasn't making that many sales or making that much money that maybe the third game would suffer because of it, but that's obviously not going to be the case. I think also it might be potentially them sort of addressing like people that talk shit about modern Final Fantasy games not selling well, so like this is maybe like a counter to that. Hamaguchi saying that, well, no, actually it's doing pretty well on PS5 and PC. Which again is great to hear. A sales number would be nice though, right? Like how many are we at? How many millions? Because we haven't had an update in quite some time. I don't think we've ever had an update post PC launch, if I'm not mistaken, right? I don't recall when the last time was that they even gave us a number on how many sales we were at for Rebirth. He says it's going well. How well is it? What's the number? Hamaguchi also says that work on the next title is progressing smoothly. Development is going extremely well, and the game is shaping up nicely. A lot of the content is already playable, and the game's direction and form are firmly set in place. Right now, the team is united around refining everything. So yeah, according to Hamaguchi, a lot of the content of the game is already playable. Now that is vague, because it could be a majority, 51% of the game is playable, and there's still 49% to be made, or it could be just, you can play it, but it's not fully made, right? Like, you can maybe go snowboarding. You can play that minigame, but, like, you don't have, like, the character model of Cloud completed, or, like, the fucking trees and all the other shit that's going to be in your way as you're going down the mountain. Maybe not fully done, right? It does also say that the game's direction and form are firmly set in place, and by form, that sounds like maybe the world design or something, right? So it's possible, like, maybe the entire world, or most of the world, is done and playable, but again, you just gotta, like, completely make the regions. Like, fill in the regions with, like, trees and foliage and enemies and whatever else, right? Stuff like that. Still, it's exciting to hear from the director of the game that a lot of the content of the game is already playable, right? And it's minigames too, potentially, right? So snowboarding, maybe if there's a modern interpretation of the actual Fort Condor minigame from the original game, because Fort Condor is going to be in the third game, the location. I don't know exactly. Whatever other exciting minigames there might be. Chocobo breeding in 4K. Automaton should have asked him how the Under the High Wind scene is progressing. That's what I need to know. I need to see that shit in 4K. He does end that statement by saying that the team is united around refining everything, so that to me sounds like a lot of the game is made, if not maybe everything, since they're in the maybe refining stage according to him. So I don't know, they could be further along than what I'm giving them credit for, because I'm just thinking like maybe the skeleton of the game roughly, but maybe they're just not polishing stage, obviously. They're still crafting the game, they're still developing the game, obviously. But maybe they're decently far along if they're refining shit. But also, just kind of in general, it's good to hear that development for the third game is going smoothly, which is kind of what we heard every step of the way, right? Like, whenever we first got some sort of development update on Part 3, it was good. And that's what we've heard every single time since then. Like, there's been no problems, at least, they've ever publicly talked about, right? Which is always exciting, because that means that there's no potential for delays. At least, according to every interview we ever got, every update we ever got, the game is progressing great. While Square Enix isn't ready to announce the finale's release date just yet, Hamaguchi says the project is moving along right on schedule. For new players discovering Final Fantasy VII Remake Integrate on Switch 2 or Xbox Series XS, I'd love for you to first enjoy that experience, and then also play the second game when it launches, while anticipating the third installment. Gotta get that remake on Switch 2 and Xbox plug in there somewhere, right? Him plugging Rebirth coming to those other consoles is pretty interesting too, because I do wonder when that's going to happen. Obviously, the rumor is sometime next year, but that's obviously a rumor at this point. I assume it probably will be next year, but when next year, who the hell knows? Because we're not even getting fucking Remake on those platforms until the beginning of next year. So that's pretty much it for this interview, and that was going to be more or less the end of the video. But I did actually come across another interview with Hamaguchi and Inverse, where we do get some other little details about Part 3 and just kind of some other general good information. For starters, when it comes to Remake on Xbox and Switch 2, Hamaguchi confirms that a demo is coming to both platforms at the end of this year. So if you're somebody that's kind of on the fence about buying the game for either platform and you want to test it out yourself, you can play the demo. Now, not really a surprise because Square Enix drops demos for, I think, pretty much all of their games. So a demo is definitely coming for Remake to those platforms. But at least we have like a release window of the end of this year. So most likely December, like a month before the game comes out or something probably. So with the Remake games coming to other platforms, Hamaguchi was asked about collaborations, to which he says, of course, having collaborations, that's not something that only we can decide. So there's nothing that I'm able to confirm or promise at this time. However, in terms of having Final Fantasy be much more well-known and loved by many players, I see collaborations as something very positive, and it would be great to have more of them. This is definitely something that I would love to see. It's kind of crazy that we're coming up on the third game, and we haven't seen that many crossovers, really. Like, we've had... Like, there's been, like, some Ever Crisis events, which is just FF7 crossing over with FF7, and there's maybe some shit in, like, 14 or something that I'm not aware of automatically. But, like, the first thing that comes to mind is, like, the Apex Legends crossover with FF7, which, from what I heard, was a shit show, and then you had, like, the Buster Sword and FF16 DLC. And that's kind of all I can think about immediately. I remember when it was first revealed that Remake was coming to Epic first, right? Like, half a year before it came to Steam. I was excited for the prospect of them bringing like some FF7 skins to like Fortnite, because I do play Fortnite with the boys, right? And that's still never happened, and that's been years ago at this point. It's crazy to me that that has yet to happen. I would love to see a crossover thing with Fortnite. It doesn't have to be like an event, because sometimes they do that with, you know, the crossovers, like when they did Dragon Ball for the first time. Like you could find like the fucking Nimbus Cloud and like the Kamehameha and like use that shit in game and fuck people up and fly into the sky and stuff. It was really cool. So the idea of having something like that in Fortnite would be pretty cool, where you could maybe loot like the Buster Sword or like the Masamune, or just have like Sephiroth's powers, or loot materia and use magic and shit. That'd be pretty fucking cool. But at the end of the day, I just would love for them to put the skins in the shop. I just want to buy Cloud. I want to buy Sephiroth, Tifa, whoever the fuck they want to put in there, dude. I'll buy them all. Now that you've announced that Remake Trilogy is coming to all platforms, has that shifted the development of Part 3 in any way? How are you accommodating for that? For this, we actually didn't adjust the schedules or development timeline for Part 3 in order to work on the multi-platform release for the 3 titles. Some of the teams have split to work on the titles, or some people are working concurrently and such. There hasn't been an impact in that sense in terms of the timeline for development of Part 3. Even though the FF7 Remake Trilogy is multi-platform, that hasn't impacted the development for Part 3, which is a little bit... maybe like a subtle hint that it could be a PlayStation exclusive launch, right? Because if they're not working on making like Xbox and Switch and PC launch, right, you could really only have to focus on the PS5 version, and then you can kind of work on the other ones in the background, right? So it could maybe be a subtle hint of that. I might be looking too much into it. I don't know. Because you got to think, if they're developing Part 3 to day one launch on all these platforms, it would affect development in some way, you would think, right? Because you got to make it for PS5, Xbox Series X and S, which are technically kind of different consoles, just power-wise, right? Then also Switch 2 and PC. You gotta think, that's like 5 different ways to build a game. Like there had to be some affecting to development, but according to him, it hasn't affected the timeline at all. Which again, to me, sounds like a possible hint that it's a PlayStation exclusive at launch, which isn't a surprise if that happens. I mean, that's what a lot of us are expecting anyways. It could very well launch on all the platforms. That remains to be seen, which he is then asked about. And is a simultaneous launch on all systems for Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3 something you're aiming for? We currently can't state exactly how it will be released. I do wish to have as many players for Switch, Xbox, and PC included be able to play the game on their desired platform. So we're going to be striving to make that happen in the best way possible. He was obviously never going to give like a direct answer on that, because he can't, regardless of what's going to happen with the launch of the third game. Like, you just can't talk about that currently, right? But he does say that he wants people to be able to play it on their desired platform. He said they're going to do it the best way possible, so that could mean a lot of different things. It being a timed exclusivity for the third game on PlayStation. Hopefully it's pretty short, which is kind of what we're expecting anyways, right? Because we've seen them get shorter as the games have gone on, right? From Remake to 16 to Rebirth. Like, the exclusivity windows were shorter and shorter and took less and less time to come to PC, right? So whether or not it's going to come to like PlayStation first and then launch on every other platform at a later point at the same time, that remains to be seen. I'm not sure on that. We could see a similar thing with what we've seen with other games, where it's PlayStation first, then PC, then Switch to an Xbox. Who knows? But that'll be pretty much it for the video, my dudes. A couple of little updates for Part 3, which is kind of nice, and some other kind of general information for the Remake project, which is pretty cool. So we kind of got something. It wasn't a state of play. It wasn't a trailer, a title reveal, a logo. Nothing in terms of the actual game itself, but we did get some updates, some pretty decent updates for Part 3, which is nice. Something. That'll be the video, my dudes. Subscribe channel if you guys are new. Social networks in the description below. Follow me on Twitter, ffvii. That's it. Bye.
Used to care what people thought, but now I care more, and nobody out here's got it figured out. So therefore, I've lost all hope of a happy ending, depending on whether or not it's worth it. So insecure, no one's perfect. We spend it with no shame. We blow that like Coltrane. We in here like Rogaine, or leave it like Cobain.